It's Thursday afternoon. Wrong way. Dang it. Doing a little connect this with our favorite ever, unless like anyone else is watching who's been on the show before. We loved you too. But our favorite ever guest, a recurring guest, Kim McKinley from UTOPIA Fiber. Welcome back.
Thank you. Congratulations. It is the first day of fall, so I'm wearing my jean vest and my cat mug for today. So celebrating.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we're back.
Just want to make it awkward. You're welcome. You got Doug Dawson with CCG, but also known for Pots and Pans by CCG.
I had no idea it was the first day of fall. My goal is just not to fall, so that's I'm pretty simple goals.
I've been traveling around, meeting new people at different events over the past 2 weeks. I've been in 3 different places for cool events, and my new test is when I'm talking to someone, I'm not really sure if they're that savvy about broadband. I'll be like, "Oh, I do a show with Doug Dawson. He does Pots and Pans by CCG," and if they've never heard of it, I'm like, "I don't take you seriously."
Ooh, I like it. Tough crowd.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, and the tough crowd guy is Travis Carter from USI Fiber.
I didn't know it's fall either. Is that today, huh?
Yeah, it is.
I learned so much on this show.
You guys don't drink pumpkin spice lattes, I'm assuming. So, I mean, I think that's the problem.
Well,
I go by the months.
Yeah, everything's pumpkin spice now. I've noticed as of last night. So,
For me, fall started on September 1st. I'm done with the whole seasons, the sun, the moon, all that stuff. Whatever, just the calendar.
Don't you work
3
for
months.
a non-profit there, Mr. Mitchell?
I do, and in fact, it's a nonprofit that was just connected by USI Fiber a couple weeks ago, and it was really cool. It was, it took a while because I'm not in the office often enough, and I kept delaying things and making things hard on your team. But you got us turned up, and then I came into the office, and I went to our switch, and I just pulled out the Ethernet jack from the other one, and I put in the USI one, and I was like, there's like a 2% chance that this will work. And of course it didn't. Everything was like super confused by everything on the network had just changed, and I was like, oh, okay, I have to do it the hard way. But so I went back to our existing service, and after a few days, USI proactively reached out to me to say, hey, we saw your service is on. We saw that you're not using it. Wanted to know if you're having any problems. We'd love to help you solve them. So that was really cool.
Nice. Well, I've been curious about this nonprofit because you seem to be jet setting all over the country, doing all stuff. So,
yeah, a lot of people want to pay me to show up, and then they'll pay me even more to leave. That's our model. So,
so that's the real way that's how they fund everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Just so everyone's clear, I get dinner for free. I don't pay to go out to dinner with Mr. Mitchell. So, yeah. The celebrity you are.
There's nobody who thought you were paying to go out to dinner with me, Travis. So we have a peekaboo. And I should say that in case you didn't notice it. Nope. I'm going to figure this out someday. I'm Chris Mitchell with the Self-Reliance in my office for once. Rye and I, Rye behind the scenes making the show work. We're doing the Digital Equity Learning Lab presentation right after this, and then we're going out to some of the folks from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance are in town for a different event. So we're going to go do a happy hour with them later.
Is the bookshelf going to fall down, though? I'm kind of worried about the bookshelf. I mean, it looks like it's kind of separated from the wall right behind you.
It's all good. Yeah, no. So, yeah, you can.
No, the other way. The other one.
Oh, the other way. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's just there's something. I don't know. I don't remember why I did that way, but there's something back there that. See, now you've lost me.
Yeah, now we have your glasses up. Yeah.
Oh.
Nice forehead. There you
go. All right. With much less ado, let's move on to Telecom Peekaboo. All right, I picked the hard one first. This is taken on a recent camping trip a little northeast of Rochester.
Take it away, Doug.
It's wireless backhaul. These are the ones that have been around since MCI.
I was saying it looks like something that has been around.
These have been around since, my gosh, the late 70s or even early 80s. So this is where you go from fairly long distances from tower to tower. Remember, MCI built their network along the railroads nationwide, and this was their entire network, no fiber. So they So yeah, so nowadays obviously they have better radios than they did then. But
And is it just that they have lighter radios now? Were these like built to be more substantial
no,
because they're very heavy, or?
no, the new radios use better spectrum. The radios, all the electronics are on the ground in the thing. It's
But why is this such heavy duty build, like a tower? Like it's just so large.
well, see those big things on the top? Those things really pick up some wind resistance in big heavy storms. So that's one of the reasons. In older days, they would have had more of those on it, and so they were really to make sure it didn't fall down when the wind hit 60 miles an hour. So
Okay.
one of my first jobs was climbing those. I'm glad to not do that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would also comment that there's a large percentage of these that are no longer in use.
Yeah, well, it could be not even turned on.
Yeah,
It's possible.
if there's fiber in the area. So this also
Right.
looks like they put a cell tower. It looks like there's some backhaul radio. I wouldn't be surprised if that Omni on the top was some sort of public safety radio.
There's
So-
even a couple of PCS antennas stuck down
Yep,
there.
exactly.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of stuff on there.
So like the ones here in the metro area in the Twin Cities, there's one out by my house here. It's been turned off for years and years as they laid fiber down.
So if we go to the next video, or the next, this is on the same stretch of road.
Oh yeah, okay.
But so I got out of the car to risk ticks because I'm a madman. I'm so wild and crazy. To get up close, and I thought I would be able to have some information because I thought a lot of these had like a sort of like who to call if there was a problem or something like that. If you were drunk and you ran it over and you want to be responsible, and there's no information on it.
That's real typical.
Yeah.
First of all, Chris, how many drunk people do you think are going to get up and call if they are irresponsible?
Yeah, no, I thought it was this. This is just my dry sense of humor.
Oh, okay, that's a joke. Okay, just making sure.
Not the first time someone said, "Oh, that's a joke."
Well, these are mostly there to warn people in their tractors not to dig up the whole dang fiber is what they're really there for. So.
Okay. Well, and then
Yeah.
it says actually it says buried cable, and I've seen these
Yeah.
before. These have been around for a while. The one on
Oh,
the
yeah.
right is like super weathered.
Yeah. It's probably still fiber. Even I mean, they've been burying fiber since the 80s. So
Okay.
I mean, it could be ancient buried telephone cable. It's not impossible. So.
And then is that like the numbers and stuff like that? Is that like just relevant for them to know?
That's relevant for the company. That's their identifier when they go back to the office. Yeah.
So every now and then on one of these, there's like a giant like 37 or 73 or some like really.
Oh,
like,
we can. I'm sorry, but we can't tell you what that means.
That's
You
top
don't-
secret.
You don't,
I'm not
you don't
there
have
yet.
you don't have a high enough classification.
So,
However, don't put any of them in your basement. That's just enough said. So, yeah.
I mean, I'll just say that when I'm driving along and I see those poles, one of the things I always think of is like, how many poles do these rural carriers own? They have like just tens of thousands of poles, like these little like posts out there.
Yeah. They buy a lot of them.
That's managing long haul networks. This is it.
I mean, they're required on certain roads to put them in, like state roads. They absolutely have to put them. So.
That's the thing, like especially around like a driveway or things like that.
Yeah.
And that's so you can do locates. You can just hook the power source up there. Is that right?
Generally, you pop that top off where it says cable buried, and there's usually two terminals on there you can connect onto to locate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're but you won't see these in like metro builds. Kim, do you guys roll out marking like this?
Mm-mm.
No, we don't. We don't either. This tends to be in
It's middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because imagine you have to mark a stretch and you drive out there. You have to be able to see these things, and then also imagine there's a huge snowbank. You got to
Right.
be able to find.
Or imagine that grass behind it's grown up.
Yeah,
4 feet.
exactly.
You
So-
need at least a little top peak of the orange.
I was
Yeah.
wondering who manages the grass around it.
It's just
I
whoever manages the road, state road folks.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think actually farmers have like these like contracts to like hay those weeds, and they'll do it periodically along major roads. But it's one of those things that like I feel like the economics of it are right on the edge, and so there's always a question of whether they want to keep doing it or not.
Yep.
Could be wrong about that. Okay, so I feel like the next logical question is for Travis. Travis, What is the promise you're going to make about Tirana next Tuesday?
Oh, you don't want to talk about? You don't want to talk about it today?
You were always asking what's up with Tirana, and you always say you're going to do something on Tuesday. So.
5 shows in a row. It's been next Tuesday. Yeah.
Yes, we have done some phase 1 drive testing, and so I'll give you the good, the bad, the ugly. So far is the good is the Tirana radios are very good at mitigating noise, but you can only mitigate noise so far. So channel hopping, we were able to find a decent channel with low noise, and we were able to get out to about a mile from the tower and maintain reasonable throughput. And I guess what I mean by reasonable is 100 down, 50 up. Okay. But when we got to the north side where we got into heavy foliage, that 1 mile radius that 1 mile really dropped quickly. So I guess the fundamental question is in an urban setting, if you provide 100 by 50 wireless, are you even competitive? And that's kind of where the next step goes here. Is can we, with the cost of the equipment and the cost of their service, can you even make a go at this? So that is the initial report back is it's impressive, but it's still wireless.
Well, there's a much more important question now. There's 2 big carriers claiming they're going to deliver symmetrical gigabit with it. And they're yes.
Maybe with their Gen 2 radios, if you're 20 feet away from the tower, maybe.
Oh, no, they're talking in rural areas where houses are a mile apart.
Also where there's no interference, right? I mean, does that make it significant?
There's lots of interference in rural areas. That's where all the interference is.
Yeah.
There's not very many channels, and there's 5 guys, WISPs, who are just using every channel possible. The rural areas are brutal for interference.
So Travis, are you actually impressed with it, or what is your general opinion of what you saw?
So far, I don't think for the cost it makes much difference. I mean, I could do very similar stuff with, say, like a Cambium platform for a fraction of the cost. The noisy channels we were in, sure, it did a better job, but you still didn't have enough throughput to make it, terribly competitive. So you played the old classic switch the channel game, kind of like when I was a kid and you had the TV, you'd click the knob and this channel's busy, so you go to the next channel, and you're always going to be channel hunting to find space. And there's just in the 5 gig band, there's not enough.
Have you tried it on a somewhat unlicensed band like 5.9 that you could do a test on and nobody would care?
Yeah, 5.9 would be. I think the results would be quite a bit better.
Is it tunable to that?
I don't think, unless we get the which I was going to apply for, is the use permit, and then I think they can open up that 40 megahertz channel or 50 megahertz block at 5.9. But the problem is that it's only temporary.
Well, you would never be able to buy that for a city. So
well, no. So our next step is we're going to put a mobile surveillance camera up, and we're going to stream high def video 24/7 and kind of plot over time how effective the system is. I'm just not sold that, at least right now, that this would be a viable alternative to. Well, it'll never be a viable alternative to fiber. The question is could this be the tip of the spear where you light up an area, bring out a bunch of customers with the idea to backfill with fiber? I guess still to be determined. Now, and I have to do the financial piece of it as well.
Isn't part of Tirana also, though, that it learns and it improves? Have you given it a chance to do that yet?
It has been up for a couple weeks now. So I personally, that's kind of the next step, is we need to determine, are we doing this all correctly? But it doesn't seem like there's a lot to do. You kind of set it up and let it go, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just struggle. 100 by 50 is not going to be enough to be competitive.
Not at all. No.
Well, and that leads us into a question I didn't prepare Doug for, but I think you could, if I'm going to throw a random question at anyone about Comcast, it's going to be Doug off the top on technology. I'm seeing a bunch of headlines about Comcast talking about improving DOCSIS by the end of next year.
Yeah, and I'm not going to give you the full story because they're going to go to a thing called either mid or upper split. They're going to reconfigure their entire bandwidth. It's still going to be the current DOCSIS 3.1. By doing that, they can theoretically increase the upload by 1,300% and increase the download by about 25%. Now, in order to do that, they have to have a lot of spare room on their network. They have to have extra space they're not using because if it's full of TV channels, you can't do it. So they might have to spend a lot of money in some networks to increase the overall size of the bandwidth. They also have to replace every single cable modem.
Well, that's
so
what
it's not going to be cheap. Yeah.
Well, and don't they have to touch just about every piece of equipment on the network on the poles and everything?
Yeah, but they're saying Cable Labs is saying that this will give them 6 to 10 years on DOCSIS 3.1 before they have to go to DOCSIS 4.0. So it gives them, right now, if they got, that would move upload speeds to maybe 500 megabits. That's a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it would stop me from.
Now they're claiming, it's so funny, in the very same article, they're claiming 1,300% improvement on download and 25 on download. And then they're going, and we're going to do 5 megabits by 1. Like, you can't do that. It's not 25% faster than today. So there's a lot of smoke blowing in this. So theoretically, they're going to end up increasing upload speeds with it.
So even when you talk about having to replace all the modems and stuff like that, I mean, one of the things that has been interesting is that the CEO of Charter, who I think just got replaced, I didn't follow that.
He did.
Being on the road all the time, I'm barely following the news lately.
Yeah, he essentially got canned. Yeah.
But he had said that they were looking at it was $200 or $300 per customer to improve all this stuff. And to me, I mean, I don't know. I'm curious.
And it's an all or nothing, and you can't layer this in with the old technology.
It's just not that much money, though. I mean, it's just not that much money to have to be competitive with fiber. I wouldn't think.
No, they're going to do it. So
you think
they won't do it everywhere. They're going to do it in some markets where they're under pressure.
Well, that's what I think. They're gonna upgrade the system where they have competition. It goes back to the same old story.
Yes.
That they're not going to do this in the rural areas that they're the monopoly in, or the cities that they have no competition or no reason to do it. Because why spend the capital when you already have the customers and you have them almost captured in this portal? But second of all, Chris, I mean, I'm more offended that you didn't think that I would be a person that you would want to talk to about technology. I mean, come on.
Come on, Chris. That was pretty blatantly bad.
I mean, you are wearing glasses, so
right.
That officially means that you're a technical person.
We're all wearing glasses.
But Kim, I'm curious. I mean, if you saw, if someone told you, knowing that, you're on a municipal network that is doing well now, but had struggled for a lot of years and worked under cost pressure. But if someone told you could significantly improve your customer experience at a cost of, $250 per customer for a one-time charge, is that something where you're yeah, let's put that off for a few years? Or are you let's get that done?
I think if you're a municipal network where you actually give a crap about the customer, you're going to do it right now. If you are because you're not looking at the bottom line and trying to please shareholders. It's a very different stakeholder who cares about what the experience is. For a municipal network, you're reporting to the residents and you're reporting to the governmental agencies or your bosses, city managers, city councilmen. On a private company, you're reporting to the shareholders and how much profit can you make. It's a very different scheme of what you're looking at. So I think for me, absolutely, we would go right in and do that. But that is not the case for every company.
Mm-hmm.
Cable companies are in a really weird spot. Remember, Charter and Comcast, the last quarter, lost customers first time in 20 years. They're starting to feel the real pressure of competition. They're going to have to be debating whether they're going to keep doing their annual price increases. And then to go out and spend this capital money. I mean, their stock prices are getting clobbered, and that's all they really care about. So
you're saying that
it's not going to be an automatic decision for them to do
But let me ask you this, Doug. Do they care about putting the money into lobbying to stop the competition who's coming into these markets?
Well, they ever stop caring about that.
Or which one do they care about more? Lobbying or the customer experience?
They're taking such a pounding. There's so much fiber being built, they're getting worried. So
Yeah, and the lobbying just isn't that expensive.
They really end up getting, they're losing a lot of customers whenever fiber shows up. AT&T says in their neighborhoods they're getting 50% of the market after 3 years, and I don't disbelieve them.
Doug, keep me honest on this, but like I feel like their lobbying government affair budgets are probably in the order of tens of millions of dollars a year.
Yeah, something like that.
So
Well, it's actually a lot more than that. Remember, like Charter spends actually more for lobbying states than they do the feds. They have big operations in the states.
But even so, the states, no state is maybe California, they're spending more than $1 million, but like almost every state, they're spending probably, many tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
It disappears with a small percentage of their cost.
But like they make billions of dollars in profit. Right. So we're still talking about like on the order of like less than 10% of their profits, is the amount of money they put into lobbying.
Less than 1/10 of their profits.
So
they make like $6 billion a quarter, if I recall.
So I feel like it's a good point to remind people like how much they spend on lobbying rather than customer experience. But at the end of the day, they'd be crazy if they cut back on lobbying.
They're going to do it.
That's their defense.
They're going to do it in Salt Lake City where there's fiber. They're going to do it in the markets that have fiber. You watch. So, yep.
Travis, what's your reaction to all this?
They're going to do it against Travis.
Sure, I don't know. It makes really no difference.
I hope they do it in St. Paul first.
Yeah, it's the next thing. But if you never fix the fundamental problem with these companies and their customer service, and you can't undo 30 years of experience that most people have had with them before a new entrant comes into the market, it really doesn't make any difference. I don't know. Every year there's some new great mousetrap that's going to undo the network, and there's nothing on the horizon. The problem is, especially if you're rolling fiber out, you kind of are spoiled where there is nowhere to go competitive wise.
Travis, I think this brings in a good question. Is it technology that the consumers care about, or is it the customer experience that they want because they're sick of being treated like crap for over years?
As long as the technology is very stable and very predictable, and then it comes down to kind of business 101. What is your customer experience like? How do you treat your customers? Are you calling a call center in some other country, or are you calling down the street? If there is a problem, how do you react to it? If you have an outage, how do you communicate with people? It's all, I would say, assuming your technology is stable and reliable and works, then you roll everything else in. But
that's the big issue. I work in 100 cities, and the number one complaint is little tiny repetitive outages.
Yeah.
I'm out for 10 minutes. I'm out for half an hour.
And there's no one that's tracking that right now.
And that's what drives people crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the next level of tracking, though. Like, this is what we need. And there's some people who are working on it, and we're going to be talking about that in future episodes. But like, we need more people to have like a little Ethernet device plugged directly into their router that is doing, like every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes, doing a check and tracking these things.
And reporting to somebody, accumulating that data.
A dashboard.
So I guess I would ask you, Kim, what are you seeing? Because as far as customer retention, because we lose very few customers. You occasionally lose somebody because they want to save $10 a month, and then you just wait 3-4 months and they're back. It doesn't even faze me anymore. I don't know. What are you guys seeing out there?
We don't really lose customers that much. If we lose customers, they move to an area that we don't have service for the most part. That's what we're seeing. But on the outage front, I think that's something where you're even working at Team Utopia is because can we do an outage for 1 minute in the middle of the day? And I'm like, no, we can't. No. You can't. People are working from home, and it's what do outages look like, and what does that customer experience look like? Because it has been a game changer over the past year of even the smallest outage people notice where they might not have noticed even 3 years ago. And it's that's what people are really looking at and seeing more and more than I have ever seen before. At 2 a.m., I had an outage for 5 minutes when you were under a maintenance window. well, how can we even be more transparent to let people know what's happening on those occasions? It's about being more transparent and forthcoming with your consumers, because they understand more than we think they understand at this point.
But in the daytime, you're throwing tens of thousands of people out off of Zoom call. I mean, that's not a good thing. So
no, this was like a one time, like one person at a time. Still, I mean, it's still even that. I'm like, no, not happening, because what if that one person goes down and then you might have a glitch, right? The only time we would do that is if you have a fiber cut or something that happens that affects 500 more people than the 10 that you might be taking down. So it's always a game of how do you like work through this customer experience right now, because consumers in this space want to be valued more than they have ever been valued before.
So let's jump to a topic that we've covered in the past, which is states giving out money. And I want to ask Kim a pop quiz. Go ahead, Kim.
No, but first of all, I want to know which side you're on before we start this pop quiz.
Yeah, are you anti-government today or pro-government? We need to know.
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay, go.
Absolutely.
Pop quiz.
So the pop quiz is Tennessee gave out like $500 million. I mean, approaching that, I think, to a whole bunch of different entities. How many municipalities got awards from Tennessee?
Zero.
See, that's what I thought, and I was all ready to be like outraged and angry. 2. Fayetteville and Knoxville both got awards to serve, I believe, unserved areas within their electric footprint. So Tennessee continues to not allow any municipalities to serve anyone outside of their electric footprint, but within their footprint, the state has now subsidized municipal fiber.
I feel like that was a trick question, Chris, because we know that Tennessee doesn't like community broadband. So I feel like you set me up for that, but thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, see, I know that you have the confidence that you would recover from it.
Well, I think they made those awards so they can say, look, see, we are not anti-muni. So, but percentage-wise, that was a pretty small piece of the pie.
It was small. Now, most of the money went to co-ops, and I think maybe local companies. I didn't see AT&T in there.
No, they did a lot to co-ops.
Yeah.
They love co-ops in Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, that's Tennessee's history of public power of the co-ops and the munis. So it's so anyway, like I feel like I'm always ready to bash the states that are giving money to the wrong entities. Tennessee, I think I'm still very disappointed that you won't let the municipalities expand fiber for a fraction of what they'll pay like other companies to do, but still steps in the right direction from Tennessee.
I think the most interesting thing about the awards is they're one of the half dozen or dozen states who said, we're not waiting for the BEAD grants. They're giving out very large state grants, and they're going like, we don't have any faith that the feds will take care of this. And they're covering so much area with these grants that they will not need as much BEAD grants. So I think that they're like Virginia's the same. They've made a commitment that we're going to take care of this stuff. So
that's not like Minnesota from what you just wrote.
Minnesota has one of the smallest state grant programs around right now. I mean, almost everybody else is bigger. So
I have a question for you, Chris. Did anybody else apply for those areas, or was it almost they had to give it to these people because they were the only ones who applied for those rural areas?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm not sure.
So they might have, their hand might have been forced. They might not really appreciate these giving these grants, but they really had no other choice.
I don't know. I mean, I see Travis, you want to jump in for a second, but I want to throw something out there that I feel like we're going to continue to see. And that's that state broadband offices are increasingly made up of people that are not from industry. They are people who are from, like more like our walk of life, who are focused on solving the problem and getting people connected efficiently. And so their first instinct is not to figure out how to pad the profits of those companies, the big national companies. And I feel like we're going to see more of this conflict as state legislatures get mad at their state broadband offices, because the legislatures are going to be hounded by the big companies with all the lobbyists and saying, why aren't you just giving us the money? And I think there's going to be some conflict there because the state offices are not run by industry insiders. There's no revolving door for most of the state broadband offices right now.
I absolutely think you're going to see that conflict. Yeah, it's coming. Yeah. So it'll be very interesting. The legislatures will just get together at 2:00 in the morning, pass a new law and kill the other grants. I mean,
Yeah. Or say,
I live in a state where we do that sort of thing.
Or like in Louisiana, be like, oh, you know what? We've decided to give you a 5th challenge opportunity the day before they turn on the network.
Right.
You can actually pull the money back after they put fiber in the ground.
Where are they pulling the state broadband office officials now? I mean, I know that they've had
anywhere
challenge.
they can find them. There was another one just left, and now they're. I think maybe like a month ago we estimated just total back of the envelope that half of the states didn't have a top state broadband official.
Right. A lot of them still don't. The fact is, if you're in the industry, they don't pay enough. They're not competitive in salaries. So, and it's one of the toughest jobs you can imagine right now. I mean, that's a lot of pressure to take that job.
So a lot of times, I think it's someone else that's been in the state and knows how the state works, and they're
most of the ones I see are coming from somewhere else already in the state government. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been recruited by a couple, and I was like, I looked at their salary, and I was like, first of all, I know what they're dealing with. No way in heck are you going to do that for what they're offering to pay. And
it is the
Utopia.
And it is the pressure cooker of a job. I mean, it's a terrible job. So
yeah.
And
Travis,
if your pension changes, then your job could change. I mean, there's no like stability of what's happening in that field as well, too.
And you can't write any checks to Travis, so that sucks.
Or he can't.
So I had a observation / question. So I've been meeting with the local government entities around here in the Twin Cities, and I just have noticed kind of a common thread that they are struggling to keep staff and attract staff. And I also kind of get the sense of please don't put too many of these programs on us because we really don't have the resources to manage them and maintain them. I don't know. Is that a fair observation from around the country, or it's just they're struggling just to do what they need to do, let alone deal with broadband issues?
My own personal theory on that, Travis, is the workforce has changed since COVID, and people don't want jobs where they have to put up with BS, and bureaucratic government jobs tend to be that. I mean, a lot of the workforce is simply wanting jobs that they feel give them satisfaction. And a lot of state jobs don't do it, and it's not just them. A lot of industries are having exactly the same problem. So
I kind of felt bad for these folks because they're like, God, we've got multiple open positions that could really help, and we can't find anybody to fill them.
And I think what I'm curious about is like for people that have less experience in the workforce who are frustrated, and I feel like maybe they are feeling like the workforce isn't what they thought it would be, and they're going to hop jobs several times before they realize that there's no perfect job. That like even if you're in a great job, it's hard, and like managers aren't always great. Like we do the best we can, but like there's no job where you're going to be like ready to go to do it every single day. Like there's going to be hard days.
Yeah, I like this.
Well, that's not true because you obviously have that job, Chris.
Oh, I there's days where I'm really just not sure I want to get out of bed.
I do love that Chris is like kind of poor me of I'm not the greatest manager, but I try attitude.
Awesome. So
he
was telling about himself there, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I try to stop. I was told years ago to stop hitting, and I'm trying to stop yelling. So.
No, it's just been an observation. It hasn't been as terribly scientific, but I just feel like it was like, oh, great. They want to put more work on us, and we don't really have the resources to handle it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I mean that's the fact, right? I mean, there's, I was just one of the events I was just at. I was there with NTIA officials, and I'm constantly talking about NTIA screwed up this, NTIA screwed up that, and when I see them face to face, I'm just like, I'm so thankful that you're doing this job, because like, it's so hard. Like you have to do it. Yeah, exactly. And so like. Right now, it's a time when NTIA has pulled a lot of really good people out of the states who they would have picked up, and anyway, I'm looking forward to 10 years from now when some of us are still doing this work. There's going to be a ton of people to pick from that have a lot of experience.
Right.
It's crazy in the broadband field in general. I was just up in Bozeman, Montana, and I passed a McDonald's, and it said their inside the inside lobby wasn't even open, and on the windows it said we're starting paying at $18 an hour. Mm-hmm. You're competing from the government sector in some of these really skilled positions, competing with some things that are companies who are just trying to get like workers through the door. It's a very interesting time right now.
Yeah, let's actually jump into I think related to this interest rates. Travis always wants to talk about this. Doug wanted to talk about it. The stock market is it's a great opportunity to buy. We believe it's going to go back up eventually, but things are inflation's up. We thought for a little while it was going to be going down. I think there's reason to believe that people who make a lot of decisions in the economy don't think it's going to go back down. So we had a 3/4 point rise, and this changes a lot of things.
Well, it's worse than that. They said there's a 3/4% rise and expect many more. He didn't say more. He said many more. And I've been around through 6 cycles of this nonsense. And, to really stop the inflation we're having, you have to go back and look at the 1980 where they jacked it up to like 8 or 9%, the Fed rate. I mean, they're going to stop inflation, and if they have to shut the economy down for 6 months to do it. So,
Doug, tell us about the Panic of 1867. What was that one like?
Well, I don't know that. I can't remember that one. I was, my bottle, I was still being bottle fed. But we're not even anywhere near the top, and this is already getting expensive. I mean, home mortgages are going to be 7% this week, and it's getting real ugly real fast.
7%? Is that how far?
They were 6.25% last week. Now they're going to go to 7%. Yeah,
I was on the road for a week, and we went up almost 1% in 1 week.
We did. 0.75% yesterday.
So aside from generalized griping about how this affects other things, how does it really change things for an ISP?
Oh, it's drastic. If you, it's just like a ISP loan is just like your home mortgage. If you go from 3 to 6%, your payment doubled. I mean, that's already one of the biggest payments for most ISPs. This is drastic. I mean, this is a game changer especially if you have a variable rate loan, or if you're just trying to get a new loan. All of a sudden, it's not affordable.
Does
that
it
will turn
stop,
to Travis and go, what's this going to do to you if it keeps going?
But does it stop projects? Like, does it stop people
from
building?
Yes. And see, now, starting 15 years ago, I worked for many projects where we would interest shop. It's like, if I can get it for 6, we go. But if it's higher than that, I won't. And you would wait it out. And so it absolutely stops projects when it gets to be these kind of numbers, because the math just doesn't work at some level. So.
Well, I want to get Travis's reaction, but I'll note one other thing that you had said, Doug, is it also changes your willingness to go through a lot of paperwork to get those low reconnect loans and things like that.
Yes.
But Travis, what's on your mind as the interest rates go up?
So the truth of this, and I'll give you one guess. Who do you think suffers on these interest rate loan issues?
The consumer.
Well, I know that you're going to say the low income folks.
Well, you're now literally going to the interest move from say 3 to 7 in your high uptake areas. Yeah, it's not great, and it doesn't. But you will not be filling in the low uptake areas as quickly as maybe you would have before. Is really what it's going to come down to. So you're going to see, I feel, more networks that are kind of Swiss cheese than you normally would, or you're going to see areas that people just slow down.
And that's because the marginal cost of like burying more plant is not worth it given how much you're paying to borrow.
Well, we've touched on it. Labor costs are through the roof. Material costs are through the roof. And now you add on top of it interest rate, risk, and especially if you're in a situation like most of us that are building that have variable rate loans out there, this kills us. This absolutely kills you. So you'll now start really looking at areas going at 7%, simply can't afford to go in there.
And you're standing at the risk that it could go to 8, 9, and 10. And that's really scary. Yeah.
But what's interesting about these fiber networks specifically is the slowdown scenario, if the stop build scenario, then you just start satisfying all the debt. Really the worst case is this interest rate gets too high and everyone stops. Because the ISPs will be fine for what they've built. It's expansion.
When you say the ISPs, do you mean all of them or just certain size ones?
Well, like let's take Utopia. I don't know their financial situation. My assumption is if they stop building, their EBITDA and it goes through the roof, right? And then they would just rapidly do debt service instead of expansion.
But I think that's question, though, I think that's a question, Travis, is for you or a private ISP, you can choose the areas that make the most sense from an ROI standpoint when you're building these areas. But for a municipality who's building these, and for a lot of cases, they're building out the entire city because that's their responsibility. So do you see these municipalities stop building as well because they don't have the choices to be the Swiss cheese model?
100% they'll stop. Or
yes, and that's my experience. They stop. They simply don't take the loans out. They go, look, we'll wait a year and maybe it'll be better, is what they do. Right.
Well, and the other part, which is even more interesting, is now private equity who's sitting there, which is really people will start selling more of their companies to private equity to offset the interest cost as well. So for the people that want to continue to build.
And the very last aspect of this is banks stop lending because now Travis's business plan doesn't look like it's so easy to pay back the money. They won't even give it to him to start with. They go, look, you don't cash flow this number. I won't make this loan to you. So banks, as interest rates goes up, the banks stop lending.
So you have different conversations with banks like right now, Travis?
Not us so much anymore because we're 12 years in. But if we were in our first or second year of building,
this would have killed them.
There would not be a third year.
No, this would have killed them.
No, right. Any hope that small ISPs are going to be taking out a bunch of money is virtually dead at this point. I mean, what was it, 75 basis points today, Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's at least another 75 coming through.
Probably several more.
So let me ask you the question though. The person, so you say you have private equity or these companies EBITDA goes up. That means people are going to come and acquire these. Who, like you said, who's going to really start paying more in the end? It's the consumer, because if you're really reducing these back to a monopoly or duopoly, what is going to happen? The consumer is going to suffer with these interest rates going up.
Yeah. This is the trifecta. This is the worst thing that could have possibly happened. Labor rates are through the roof, material costs are through the roof, and capital costs are through the roof. I mean, it couldn't be any worse than this. And this has all just happened in the last, 2 years.
Let's just go back and edit that out, because I don't want to hear, after the past, 6 years, I don't want to hear anymore. It couldn't get worse than this. I'm done with that phrase.
Yeah, you can't make this up. It gets worse. So, yeah.
We need to stop. Is this a federal government dig, Chris, or is this just reality that you're trying to say?
So, I mean, I'll say that, I do feel like I was just listening to someone who maybe is on Twitter, someone that I follow. I do follow a variety of people who I agree with eclectically because they have all kinds of odd beliefs that change on the day. And I also follow people I disagree with. And someone was just going off about how, what's her name from Massachusetts, the senator, Warren, and they were blaming her for the inflation because of on different packages. And I was
she such amazing personal power.
Yeah, thank you, Juan. I know Juan is a little bit behind, but he almost got it in faster than I remembered it. That's how long it took me to pull that name. But my reaction is sort of oh, did she cause the inflation in Australia and Europe and everywhere else too? And that's the thing that I don't fully get is this isn't my area of specialty, but the idea that the United States can stop worldwide inflation by killing the economy, I think there's reasons to question the orthodox strategy. And I do realize the United States is what it had been 20-25% of the world economy. It's significant. But anyway, I feel like this is still in 100 years, people look back at us like we look back at medical, practices 100 years ago.
We can't stop it, but we can put a real damper on it. It does work. Monetary policy works. And it's a long 2-hour webinar all by itself, but it does work. So.
Rye must be really busy because I'm surprised he didn't get up a economics with Chris banner again. So let's move away before he has.
But you bring up an interesting point. At the end of the day, and I always go back to one of the wisest people I've ever met. $100 internet will be here shortly, and at $100, these interest rates are irrelevant.
Yeah, and I know
that is one way around it. If you charge enough money, it becomes way less important. Right?
Yeah.
And I'll note that there are some folks who sitting here in this chair who are paying $100, but $100 introductory or standard tier internet. I
guess I would say ARPU. If your average is $100 across the board, then a few 75 basis points is not a big deal.
Right. So a couple of the topics we're going to get to. NYCHA, New York City Housing Authority, has announced a new plan that comes after the previous administration, the de Blasio mayorship, came up with a plan that I don't know, I loved. I think other people on this call thought was really sharp for a large city to basically build fiber throughout a lot of the city that would be open to all kinds of different business plans, that would basically make it so that anyone that wanted to attach to it could do so under reasonable terms to like build out their building or the neighborhood or whatever they wanted to do. And new mayor came in and was basically like, hey, Altice and Time Warner Cable, or now Charter Spectrum, and and Verizon, are you guys all cool if we do? Oh, you don't want us to do that? Cool. How about if we just write you big checks? And that seems to be what's happening now with the Public Housing Authority.
It's like 200,000 or 300,000 people, right? It's a giant number.
Yeah, I think it might even be more than that. I mean, there's literally like one of the, I think Queensbridge has like 50,000 residents, and that was a test project where they've done free Wi-Fi. And so, yeah, I think there might actually be 500,000 or 600,000 people living under.
And so the city's saying, we're just going to go ahead and pay everybody's bill. That's
for cable television as well as
for cable television too.
That's what I saw. So first of all, I'd say I did read all. I still don't understand exactly that.
Yeah, I didn't read it.
I thought it was a basic package of telephone. I assume it would just be the local cable channels. I can't imagine they're paying for ESPN. But then like a broadband package as well. And yeah, like the and it's with Altice and Charter Spectrum, and they're having a discussion with Verizon about whether they would apply. But nearly everyone is covered by those two cable companies who have divided up the Big Apple. So,
well, it's a heck of a deal for the cable providers because they get 100% penetration, whether people use it or not. It doesn't even matter if they have a home computer; they're going to bill for that unit, right? And then, I mean, they just got that many more customers, which for Charter, since they lost customers last quarter, that's going to spike their number up. I mean, they're loving this. Well, and it's a guaranteed revenue stream. The question is how it's not sustainable. The next mayor's going to come in and go, we write a check for how much every month, and they're going to can it. I mean, it's not a sustainable program. That's a lot of money to write out.
So
it also says it's only a 3-year deal too.
Yeah.
So 300,000 residents are under.
Well, that's as long as the mayor's going to be in. That's why it's
exactly. Yeah.
And I think NYCHA may actually have more residents than that, but I think these are the developments that have been a part of it. So
now, to be in favor of this plan, it gets everybody broadband now. I mean,
yes, that's huge.
You have to admit that it's done. And
so, I'm curious.
If you did this for 3 years while you were building the fiber, I think I would be way in favor of this.
I mean, Travis, if I came to you and after I became mayor of Minneapolis, a city that I'll probably never live in because St. Paul. But if I was mayor of Minneapolis and I said, Travis, how about if this, for every family that you sign up, we'll guarantee you $30 a month for every low-income family in Minneapolis. Would that change the economics of you building out to low-income neighborhoods?
Oh, absolutely. The question is, how long will the program run for? Because I've got to sign up for 10-year debt to build that. And if you're going to sign me up for a 3-year deal, then I would pass.
Right. And that's where the
and how difficult is the city going to be to work with? Is it going to be 1,000 meetings, feasibility studies, and all this other stuff? Or are we going to get to work and get something done? That would be my next question.
Have you ever met government, Travis? Have you ever met government?
Well, I get along really well, like with our local government, but I make a point of having a point person, somebody that we can deal with, and then they deal with the government minutia behind it. I don't have to deal with it. I won't do a government deal unless we can focus it that way. So if Chris, if you were in charge of the program and you said, all right, we're going to do a 10-year deal and I could match it to my debt, we'd do that all day long.
And I think what's interesting there is that, in my mind, that's a different kind of deal than one with a massive company that has different incentives. Where as soon as you make a deal like that with a big company, they have people whose job is to figure out, okay, how can we maximize the revenue Chris is going to give us, as opposed to Travis, who's like, cool, we're going to connect a bunch of families that need it.
Now you got to remember, the cable company has very little incremental cost to do this. They're already at all these buildings.
Right.
So they're not building any network. They do have to give people
great deal.
Yeah, so this is a heck of a deal for them.
Mhm.
I think it's also, I'll be curious to see, like, I mean, in more details. So, thank you, Jake, for putting in 300,000 residents and 200 developments. And Rye had found that NYCHA serves 555,500 New Yorkers, although that does include Section 8 programs. So there's probably a substantial number of people who are in Section 8 where you would not be able to do.
They're not going to be part of this. Yeah.
But that's honestly, like, that's the one place where you want it, right? Like the 200 developments, you can have a really great program that would serve those people free or high quality service. It would be totally affordable in those 200 developments. I mean, we're talking about, it would be a significant one-time cost. Like, so, I mean, just numbers that I've seen in talking to people, you're talking about a new building, on the order of like $200, $250 per unit of one-time costs to be able to connect them, whether it's with Ethernet or something, to then deliver a high quality service over time. Older buildings, though, you're talking about maybe like many hundreds to $1,000, $1,500 to deal with the toxic chemicals of a building that was built in the 70s or the 60s.
But they're gonna spend $600 or $800 or $900 a unit this way every year.
Right, exactly. So I'm just trying to lay the economics out for people who aren't familiar with it. But the place where you do not have the option of having an economical, a $300 per year, or sorry, $300 one-time cost, $10 per month recurring costs. You cannot do that in the single family homes or in like small apartment buildings where you have the Section 8 housing. The Section 8 housing is precisely where you want to strike this deal with the cable companies. That's where they can make a difference.
Yes. Because they could do that anywhere.
Right. You just give them addresses.
Right.
Bottom
line, good deal for the cable companies and good deal for the people who get it. They're not paying anything. So it's
Chris. Yep. The question I have for you, Chris, remember we talked about free? People don't like free. How does that?
Yeah, some people don't.
How does that overlay on here? Especially free from the government,
It's a good question. I mean, let's have a realistic sense. I actually don't think this moves the needle as much as most people who read that article think it will, right? Okay. I think a lot of people never sign up for this program because it's not enough to just give people, like a free option. Like we said, there needs to be digital skill building. There needs to be devices. And so I believe NYCHA is probably doing some of those other things already, but it's not a part of this article. But you couldn't just do this across the United States and solve our broadband problem.
Okay.
Because there's this issue of trust dealing with this community of people who are used to trying to be ripped off, who are used to dealing with people.
Not to mention, this podcast would have no purpose and we'd all be gone. So.
Yeah, God forbid, if in a week where I'm working like 60 hours, I take some time to breathe. Go ahead, Kim.
What are you talking about?
Around?
What are you talking
I did
about?
sleep on the plane. All right.
I never. But I mean, this is just giving more. Like this goes into the people who can deliver really fast and it's uncomplicated are big cable companies. Whether we like it, whether we don't, that's what they can do, and that's why they win in these situations. Because it's a lot more complex to build these networks, even with Travis or myself, than to just pay the big cable companies to get it done instantaneously in an instantaneous culture.
No, and they walked into the new mayor and said, "You've got a 5-year plan. We can solve this in 5 months." That's exactly their sales.
And when it becomes clear that this was a terrible idea, you won't be in office anymore, so it's not your problem. I mean, I do think about this too. I mean, to give Elon Musk some credit, which I know that is could very well put me, on the outs with a lot of people that I like. He's connected 500,000 people, right? And that is so many people. That's like, I just, it's like, I don't know, it's like 3 Chattanoogas, 2 Chattanoogas, 2.5 Chattanoogas, maybe that, like that's pretty remarkable.
Now that's his worldwide number, but yeah, it's going to grow to the many millions, of course. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we have another story or two. Let's go pretty quickly through this. I don't want to get too outraged, but Palo Alto is once again building fiber. I'm sorry. Is considering building fiber. It seems more serious than we've seen it in the past. And I wanted to include this because I've long been watching Palo Alto closely, and I have a real frustration with Palo Alto, which has some pockets of people that really need better access, who can't afford it, although a lot of people in Palo Alto are quite wealthy. And Palo Alto has been running dark fiber for more than 20 years. That money, by local law, I believe, or else local policy, is set aside in a bank account that's supposed to be used for fiber. So they're sitting on more than $35 million, I believe. And I have never seen a community take this long to make a decision. And no community I've ever met just has $35 million of free money sitting around that they could do something with.
Well, this is the typical case of what we always call paralysis by analysis. I mean, they have studied this every 3 years since 1997. So they just can't make up their mind. So
Well, in some ways,
obviously at the political level, they've got people for and against it, and they just can't break that.
I think it's
Yeah.
different at the political level. I think most people have been for it. The city staff, and in part, I think a previous utility administrator specifically went out and recruited people who would be opposed to municipal fiber, and they have quietly thrown wrenches in every opportunity that has moved forward.
That's interesting because that's what happened in Seattle. The many times Seattle study at the electric utility there said we're not doing it no matter what, and they were the only ones who could do it. So it didn't matter that the mayors wanted to do it. So.
It goes back to politicians can't make these things happen. It's the city staff who has to work day in and day out to execute on these things that make these things happen. And if you don't have the city staff who's willing to put the blood, sweat, and tears in, this project is never going to get off the ground, no matter what the politicians say.
Because launching a citywide ISP is a lot of work. I mean,
It is.
Work. Yeah.
I mean, I just have to say, I've always found some of the studies ironic, and there's one that I was really angry about. I don't know, it might even be 10 years ago now. It would have been after 2012 because it was after DOCSIS 3 had been deployed in the area, and there was people who were saying, well, you don't understand, there's just no demand because AT&T has this advanced DSL there, and Comcast has the DOCSIS 3, and we don't have the kind of demand. And I'm just like, yeah, right. Like, why would Palo Alto have the kind of demand that we see in these really tech savvy cities like Chattanooga, right? Like Tullahoma, like Longmont, Colorado, like obviously those cities have a tremendous demand for fiber, but why would Palo Alto? And now like the argument is like, oh, well, there was always a demand for better fiber, but now AT&T is meeting it. So there's nothing for the city to do. And
why isn't Google building it there?
I think Google's not building there because Google doesn't want to deal with a lot of stuff in California.
Politics, right?
Yeah. So, and I mean, I say like I think Google doesn't want to go head to head with the cable company unless they have an advantage.
Yeah.
It can be hard.
Mesa, I mean, they're doing that in Mesa, but that's a different topic for a different day.
Still trying to figure out what's going on in Mesa. I don't think we really know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Travis.
We're not going to know until someone actually shows up and does it, right?
So I've got I feel it's a very logical question to ask the team here about Palo Alto. Have they done a feasibility study yet?
Oh, they've done so many.
Let's see, probably 7 or 8. I don't know.
It's one of the highest cost places to build fiber in the world.
Yeah.
Why?
Why? Because it's California.
Labor, just like it's all built up. There's it's all going to be underground, and it's like I don't know why it's complicated, but Doug, you probably have a better sense.
No, that's one of the places I've refused to ever do a study in. So, but I just assume they probably have local ordinances that just make it incredibly expensive to bury, probably.
So we basically have more demanding residents who are a little more picky on how everything is done, probably than anywhere else.
Remember, West Coast can get nutty. Remember 5 years ago, Seattle put in an ordinance that said before you can put a pedestal or a box in a neighborhood, you have to get the closest 15 houses to all approve it.
Yes.
Imagine what that would do to you, Travis.
I think a significant amount of the reason for that, though, was people were like, we don't want CenturyLink to put a bunch of boxes up to deliver crappy DSL.
Yes, but that also stopped anyone from building fiber. I mean, it was a massive overreaction. You can't get 15 neighbors to approve anything. There's no topic you could get 15 people to vote on.
The interesting thing about Mesa that
you haven't been to my neighborhood, Doug. I bet I can get 15 neighbors. I'll go around and see.
But you have to get the closest 15. You have to get every single one naysayer.
You can't cherry pick them.
Yeah, you can't cherry pick 15. Yeah.
Maybe I'll this bet. I won't be like Chris and take bets that you're going to lose.
Don't take a bet because we're going to make you go get them to agree on something. So. Yes.
But you brought up Mesa, and I hadn't thought about this. But one of the things I feel like is the most undercovered aspect of this is AT&T is planning on building there. AT&T is not the ILEC.
No.
AT&T, this is a major deal if AT&T is actually going to build fiber
Yeah.
in a greenfield build for them.
Yeah, they've never done that before anywhere, so that's really unusual. Yeah.
I just want to sit along the sidelines in Mesa. I feel like I should just go rent a house and watch this go down in Mesa.
You don't need to rent a house. Travis will give you a room in his like cavernous trailer.
But it's an interesting city, as you can imagine, being in Arizona. It's got an older population. This is really heavily residential. I mean, it's not a giant. I mean, it has business because it's a city, but it's way heavy residential. It's an interesting place.
Well, just to be clear, I just finished my feasibility study of Palo Alto, California, and it does not look that difficult to build in comparison. It'd be about as hard as it is here in Minneapolis,
Except they don't have winter.
Yeah, they don't have winter, but I mean, they've got all the basic components you need. It looks like they've got a decent public right of way, kind of a north, south, east, west configuration. So I'm going to take a wild guess and assume that is not the reason they haven't built over the last 7 feasibility
really
studies.
fast feasibility study that you did, Travis. I think it was.
Well, when you've done this long enough, you can kind of look at it and go, oh, do they have the 10 things we need? Yep, they do. And they even have it better. They have weather. So,
yep.
Did anyone catch the population of Palo Alto? What's their most recent? Oh, sorry.
Somebody will pop it on the screen now. You ask. We have.
All I can say it's the upper 1% in Palo Alto. That's all I know about what we're looking at.
Okay, so it's about 70,000 people, but like to give you a sense, I mean, a previous feasibility study that people thought was high. The CTC feasibility study put it at like 70 million, and
they already have half of it in the bank.
They had half of it in the bank, and then the more reasonable one, the more recent one is about 120,000 with the labor costs having and other inflation. But to give you a sense, like Far Texas just built this for like 38, or is building it for 38 million on the similar, a totally different type of place, but the same number of people. It's an interesting case study of the two extremes.
But how much money have they spent on feasibility studies? What are they waiting for?
Oh, it must be on the order of $5 million at this point, of like not just feasibility studies, but consultants and everything. Maybe $3 to $5 million, I would guess, like over the past 20 years.
Everyone who's in the industry to give them their opinion.
Yeah,
Doug.
not me. Yeah.
26 square miles. Yeah, I think you're right around 100 gets it done. But you don't need 100 in debt. I mean, you'll have a lot of subscribers.
Right, but so from my point of view, I was just always so frustrated because I would be talking with some of them, usually with people who were interested in it, and I was like, all right, fine. Like you want to argue about how much it costs? Maybe it's going to be 50 million, maybe it'd be 70 million. You got $35 million. It's free. Like build some of it out. You'll get a sense of the numbers pretty quick.
Oh, you can build a lot for 35. Heck,
and that'll generate the revenues to help pay for the rest.
Yeah, you could get a third done, take those revenues and build the rest.
Right.
Yeah.
So it goes back to something is holding it back besides revenues, besides
it's got to be politics.
It's utility staff that have they came over from Alameda, and they had horror stories about what it was like. Alameda having been a failed public-private partnership that then turned into a failed retail model, I believe, that Comcast crushed underneath its boot. And those people were like, never, ever will I ever be a part of another municipal network. And they were brought in specifically for that from people who wanted to basically keep the utility from doing it. And they were successful. I mean, I think I'm oversimplifying, but it's a significant factor.
I didn't realize it was them. Those folks did go through the wars. Yes. So,
but I think it comes down to, and not me, because I'm the anomaly in this space, but government employees are risk averse.
Right.
And that comes down to the bottom line of government employees do not want to take the risk. And you don't want to do that. You don't get into government because you want to take the risk to be in these like private startups.
Which is why 95% of cities have no interest in being an ISP. This is not ever a topic of conversation, right?
Yeah. Last topic, one that we'll probably run out of time on, but we can start off with, and we'll be able to continue in the future. In fact, I hope that at some point in the future we'll be able to bring Mike Conlow on to talk about his discussion of it. But Vantage Point released a study to basically say hey, y'all are kind of using the wrong numbers to figure out how much it's going to cost in different discussions about bringing fiber to everyone. And I think they make a number of very good points in terms of the estimates of the number of households that still need to be connected to fiber, as well as some of the costs having been based on older figures. And then they come up with the number of households that need to be connected and a figure that is, I believe, on the order of like $400 billion. Is that right, Doug?
No, they said anywhere from 150 billion to 250 billion, if I recall, but it was way more than 42 billion. Yeah.
Right. And so Mike Conlow then did an analysis in which he felt that it would probably be on the order of a total cost of 150 billion, but that the 42.5 billion coupled with RDOF could really move us in that direction well, which I think is an important point, because $42.5 billion the federal government is putting into this is not meant to be the sum total of expenditure that results from that program.
No, because they're not doing 100% grants. I mean, that's yes. So it's probably going to average out to 60% grants by the time it's all done. So that means there's another 30 billion coming in matching funds. So that's 70. And then RDOF is quite a pile. So
did they count the interest rates in this study?
No, and they didn't count the other 5 things that make these BEAD grants expensive, like really expensive environmental studies to build on places that don't need it. You know, you have to go get a certified letter of credit. You have to pay prevailing wage, on and on and on. These things are easily 15 or 20% more expensive than what Travis is spending to build.
And then additionally, the 20% that's going to go to taxes potentially if that's not fixed.
Yes. So the congressional rules said, here's the money, and by the way, it's not really 42 billion; it's effectively 30 billion because of those extra costs. So I completely agree with him that the folks who think that's enough money to solve everywhere, and there's a bottom line to that. The bottom line is communities that are being really proactive to make sure they get a BEAD grant are going to get it. A lot of communities are not going to get one. They're going to be really disappointed after all this talk, and they're not going to get a broadband solution. I mean, it's going to get very ugly. The states who are doing the big grants, like Tennessee, will do very well. They don't need as much now. The states who haven't done anything are going to get really, really upset.
And the states that
Minnesota's one of them. The broadband office in Minnesota estimated that they're going to need 50% more than what they're likely to get from BEAD, and that was before the cost went up.
Don't even talk to me about Minnesota, where we have a $9 billion surplus that they mostly couldn't figure out what to do with.
And they gave $100 million of it to broadband, and that was federal money. It wasn't even there. It wasn't even there. So.
And that's where I just it's clear that this isn't a priority, whether for urban or suburban. I mean, it's definitely not a priority for urban, but yeah, there's actually this conversation just reminded me of one of the things I learned about one of the tribes that we've worked with in the tribal broadband boot camps is Hoopa Valley, and Hoopa Valley got $67 million from the tribal broadband awards that were recently given out by NTIA, way behind schedule, but nonetheless very exciting. Really, really enthusiastic about what Hoopa Valley is doing, but it is quite interesting that they quickly learned that they will not be able to break ground anytime soon because all the environmental and other permitting has to be done for the entire project
before they can spend a penny. Right?
And so they're doing different things, right? They're building a data center, which is why they were able to exceed the $50 million cap on the program. They're doing a wireless a tower for like a wireless backhaul link while they're hoping some other middle mile stuff in the state will get sorted out. And they're doing a fiber to the home project. And none of the 3 of those things can move forward, even though they're totally independent, but they all have to have all the permitting done, which also means that they are not able to really do the same kind of workforce development that they would be able to if they could move a little bit more incrementally and get going on some of it. And it's just totally self-defeating.
And really waiting 2 years means 2 more years of inflation, meaning their money won't go as far, right?
Yes.
No, it's when you work with these programs, it's really, you get heartburn every single day when they tell you can't do something that you thought you could. These federal grants are not fun to work with.
Any last topics, Travis?
Can we give our viewership homework on this show?
Yes, we absolutely can.
I have a homework assignment for everyone that always likes to talk about speed tests. Tonight at 8:00 Eastern time would be a very good time for you to test how good your broadband is, because we have a high traffic generation now on Thursday nights due to the football episodes they run, and I think they're running the second episode on Amazon tonight at 7 Eastern. So let's give it an hour to cook up, and then go ahead and see how great your broadband is.
And report back.
Yeah, please.
They tweet it.
So I guess what we would request is if people would do a speed test at a non.
And then do it another
that.
time. Do it another time also and see how it compares.
Yeah,
right?
And if you watch the show, you could watch during the different quarters and run a periodic speed test and see how fabulous your network is doing in your neighborhood.
Yes.
So there, that was what I wanted to bring up.
I can't do this tonight, Travis. I have a hot date with my wife.
Nice. And if anyone else wants to start the campaign that I just started of Utopia coming to Palo Alto, California, I've already been sending that to
actually,
Palo Alto.
I'm going to sign that. I'm going to sign that petition. Yeah.
Yes. Miss Kim would like to come visit you all and start digging.
I was really trying to go for that diamond status on Delta this year, so I appreciate just finishing it off. I'm really close, so I figured this is the thing.
I've got the miles for diamond on Delta, but I am not at the cash expenditure yet.
I'm with you, Chris, because I'm cheap. So we're on nonprofit and government. I got the miles. I just don't have the cash.
Yeah, I feel like I'd be closer if I would take fewer red eyes. Like the red eye really drops your ticket price, I found. So I did a lot of that.
I used to hit it very easily when I lived in the Virgin Islands and flew back to the U.S. every week. Boy, that really racked it up. Yeah. 3-hour flight to Miami, and then I started my flight to go somewhere.
Is this the very first episode we have not had a new government program this week? Or did I miss it?
It's that wand of yours. It's working, Travis. It's working.
Palo Alto, make it happen. I feasibility studied you. You're good to go. Excellent.
Well, I really appreciate Kim and Doug joining us once again. It's been a wonderful recap, and I think we're going to have a good opportunity to get some more shows in here because I think I'm not traveling much until more at the end of October. And Juan is bragging there in the chat here, the speed test.
All right, there we go.
I'll just know. I mean, like, who knows how many of Juan's neighbors are watching the show though right now and bringing down that.
That would
well, hold on now, Juan. Also, if you would tell us what technology are you on DOCSIS? Or are you on something?
Oh, that's DOCSIS.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that we report in. So it'll be interesting. That actually be interesting to see next show at what Juan was at during the football episode.
Yes.
Yeah. So, maybe that will be next week. We'll take a look at the calendars and we'll figure out what's going on. But I think we'll be looking at having Kim and Doug back probably in 2 weeks and perhaps another show soon. MediaCom. Wow, I've never seen a speed test that high in MediaCom.
He's down the road from us.
I think Juan, we're gonna have to have some dinner here.
Chicken wings.
Yep.
Because you will notice, and I just want to be clear on this. We have had no chicken wings since the bet was won. So just to be clear.
No, we did. I did. I bought you at Ray J's in Minneapolis. Remember? And then we decided to go double or nothing.
Okay. How am I doing on that bet, by the way?
Really well.
You're doing great.
Yeah.
I'm going triple or nothing, just so you know.
Travis, I keep wanting, and I was hoping I would get out to your house, and then something just came up. But you told me not to come. That's what came up.
No. Remember, I got kind of busy with my job. So, anyways,
But soon, I think maybe we should just actually see if, we can get Hanky and other fans who've been on the show in the area and just do a meetup.
Should we do a nerd meetup?
Yeah, totally.
Right. Yeah. Well,
yeah. Kim, you should find an excuse to fly out. Doug, I know that you're not going to waste your time with us.
I'm really going for it.
So thank you, everyone. It's been another fun episode of Connect This.